let's get some of the lads together. Let's have a good idea. Okay, you're all right. Come on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. You ready? Come on, you lot. Go on, then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Lincoln City are the team, the Radiance is their name. Stinsel Bank is their home ground and football is their game. So come and cheer them on, you lads, support them all the way. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white, the imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight.
Morning all. Hopefully we're all well. It's a fine Tuesday morning, first day of the week for many. I worked yesterday, but first day of the week for many, and what a weekend it was. It was a good solid win for the Imps. I think it probably pays just to catch up with that before we go into tonight's game, because otherwise it's really easy to lose sight sometimes of the positives. I did an article to that effect on Sunday. That wasn't fan bashing, by the way. That wasn't criticising people who had pointed out some of the things that we didn't do as well on Saturday. I wasn't about that, but it's just don't let trying to point out the negatives or trying to be as balanced as you can be take away the enjoyment of it. We scored 6 goals away from home. We're now, I think, in the top 6 in terms of goals scored in the division. It's utterly ridiculous. Given that had we not scored 6, had that been a 0, we would have think of being in the bottom 3 or 4. So very fine margins. And actually, there's finer margins after these 10 games than I think there are after most 10 games. The league's really compact. Anybody can beat anybody. And aside maybe from your Ipswich, Portsmouth, Sheffield Wednesday, who look like they're going to do well, there's very little in this division. Very little. We have not been at our best at times. Had we got the results at home that I felt that perhaps we deserved against Fleetwood and Forest Green, or certainly had the ability to get, deserved might be too strong a word, we could be second or third, which is ridiculous because we haven't been good enough to be second or third. But it does just go to show how tight this league is. Of course, tight doesn't describe Saturday's game at all. When the news first came out that they'd had 2 men sent off last Tuesday and they were going to be without their centre halves, and what would Joey Barton do? The last thing that I thought he would do would go 3 at the back, but drop his only available centre back. I mean, it's utter madness. It's utter madness. And coming from anybody else, you would go, what is the manager doing? Coming from Joey Barton, you just go, it's Joey Barton. Do you know what I mean? He does that sort of thing. Bristol Rovers lost that game just as much as we won it. And what I mean by that is normally 2 teams go out to win a game and the best team wins it and they win the game. But Bristol Rovers handed the loss. They lost that game. Their decisions contributed as much to them losing it as it did to anything else in terms of tactics. But they were a decent side going forward and they created chances going forward. And I think the XG suggested that the game, dog's gone missing. The XG suggested that the game could have been something like 4-2 rather than 6-3. So, there were a lot of goals scored. It was really, really exciting for everybody, I think, concerned with the club. 1 minute. Charlie, come on. It was exciting for everybody concerned with the club. It's just exciting football. My mate Matt turned to me last Tuesday against Derby and said to me, this is as exciting a game as I've seen since we beat Ipswich 5-3. I think we've had 2 of those now. And you pay to be entertained, don't you? Football fans rather pay to be entertained, and that's what we've been. We've been entertained. Okay, it's a little bit hairy at times, but come on, you don't go away from home and score 6 goals, even against a team with a weak defence, because you've still got to go and score those goals. And when you look at some of the passes and some of the movement and some of the things that happened during the game, there were some really positive moments for Lincoln City. There was the pass over the top. I think it was from Matty Virtue. To for the penalty was exquisite. There was Lasse Sorensen's pass. Go on, let's go. It's all right, my dog's not really up for this. He's turned around wanting to go home already. So there was Lasse Sorensen's pass. I think it was for the 5th. I'd lost count by that point. Another delicious ball. You've got Jack Diamond, who, you know, he created Ben House's goal, even though it was a kind of a deflection that ended up taking it to House. It was another good cross into the area. And I've said in an article today, we've got a number 9 who scored 3 goals in 2 games, and that's not necessarily because he's any better or worse than the 9s that we've had in the past. It's because the right balls are going into the areas. And to be fair, you know, whether he's better or worse, he's making good runs. Ben House does make the runs into the box, similar to those that we saw Marquis making when he first arrived at the club, and scored 3 goals in 3 games. So quite pleased with that. It's all right, my dog is not up for this, so I'm going to have to sit in the garden and do this video. So quite pleased with that. I think that there are positives. You've got to look at those positives. I mean, the penalty was soft. Yeah, it was. And, you know, at the time when it was 2-1, they hit the post. Regan Poole cleared off the line. So we rode our luck a little bit. But people say, oh, you know, they had one cleared off the line. They did. But Poole got back and cleared that off the line. That was as good a defensive manoeuvre as anything a striker will do at the other end to put the ball in the back of the net. And it just showed a doggedness and a determination. We were a bit raggedy at times at the back. We were. And I think that there will be a general evolution. Come on then, stubborn ass. I think there'll be a general evolution over the next few weeks, depending on the fitness and the application of Jacob Davenport towards him in the holding midfield role, because I actually think some of that raggedness comes from the fact we're covering an awful lot of ground, kind of around that back 4 and just in front of that back 4. And at times we're just getting pulled out of position. We saw it against Cambridge. Cambridge second goal, you pause it as their phase of play comes forward, and you know, we've got a left back at the centre half, we've got the right back on the wing, we've got the right winger. It's just, yeah, it looks like you've thrown a bag of bloody Skittles on the floor. It's so random. There's no order, there's no merit to it at all. I think we weren't that bad against Bristol Rovers, but I think you could see elements of that again. When we go forward, we're good. When we're out of possession and we hold our shape, we're good. The problem we have is when we go forward and lose possession. And teams actually aren't particularly countering us. It's just like we just lose where we are. We lose what we're doing. But if for every goal the opposition score, we score 2, we'll win the league. So, and it doesn't matter how you concede them, does it? I seem to think that was the Kevin Keegan philosophy at Newcastle. It was the Ozzy Ardiles philosophy at Spurs. And even going back as far as the Italian national team from the late 80s, early 90s, it always stuck in my mind as a kid. I had that World Cup 90 Orbis sticker collection. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And I remember reading a quote about the Italian team, that the Italians believe that attack is the best form of defence, which was completely against everything going on in Serie A at the time, because it was boring as hell. But I always remember that attack's the best form of defence. Scoring goals is the best way of assuring that you don't lose games. People say it's not conceding goals. That's a good basis. If you can go and score 4 or 5 a game, you can afford to let 3 in. And that won't happen. That won't happen all the time. But it did happen on Saturday. It was a freak result. It was the first time in 60 years, I think, since we've gone and we've won 6-3 away from home. I think Newport, did I see? Potentially. So it's a freak result. You enjoy it. You enjoy them while they come. Credit to the fans that went, the 300 odd, 400 odd that went down there, got what they deserved. And at the moment, once again, what's better? Our away form is better than our home form, especially if you throw the cup wins into that as well. Our away form is very, very good indeed, despite the 2 defeats in terms of the table. So that kind of brings us on. I mean, you know, the rest of the game has been looked at in detail. I've written about it. Jake and Chris have spoken about it on the West End Image show, and doubtless I think it's Ben and Jake this week on the podcast will touch upon it. So I don't want to go too much deeper. We've got a game tonight, Doncaster Rovers, Papa John's Trophy. I call it the Mickey Mouse Trophy, but as far as I'm aware, Disney haven't started sponsoring EFL competitions. They could do, but they haven't. So it's Papa John's Trophy. I think I worked out a win will guarantee us a place in the next round. It will certainly guarantee us £10,000 in the bank. So it's an important game in that respect. We don't have a game on Saturday. So actually we're in the reverse position that we were, I think it was a few years ago, we played Mansfield at home and their game on the Saturday was cancelled. And they put a full first team out and they came and they kicked lumps out of us. As much, hang on one second, there's a tractor coming. As much with a view, I think, to kind of limiting us in the league, to be honest, because we were league rivals. I think we had to play a relatively strong side. They came and kicked lumps out of us. I think Mickey O'Connor was sent off in that game. I might be wrong. I seem to think so. But that was because they had the Saturday off and they were much fresher. So we've got that. We're much fresher. Doncaster haven't. They play Crawley on Saturday, and that's a game that they're going to need to win. So their manager Gary McSheffrey has said that there will be changes. He has said that there will be some young players coming in, but there'll be some experienced players coming in. He's got 1 or 2 coming back from injury. They might get 45, 50 minutes. But what that actually does mean is they might be disjointed. You can make too many changes. You certainly see that, I think, in the patterns of play. So I think they're there for the taking. I really do. They've lost 3 on the bounce. It's not going to be their full first team. This should be an opportunity. Oh, Charlie, come here. There you go. This should be an opportunity for the Imps to progress and to make the game against Newcastle under 21s as meaningless in reality as it looks on paper. So I just wanted to touch upon really how I think that we might line up tonight, and the players that I think that we might see, and how that might benefit us going forward into the league season, into the deeper season, bearing in mind that we've got 10 days off after this. And I think that's another important thing to remember. So whilst I think that there will be changes, I don't think we'll go with our strongest side. There is an opportunity for players to have a prolonged rest after this. So there might be 1 or 2 who play tonight who are senior first team players. Jordan Wright will play in goal. That's almost certain. And I think given his heroics against Barrow, I think that he's a good solid goalkeeper. Do you know what? He could do a job in League One. I don't think he's a top 6 League One goalkeeper. But I think if you're in the bottom half of League One and you've got Jordan Wright in goal at the minute, and I'm not saying that he won't get better, but I think if you've got him in goal in the bottom half of League One, you're relatively happy. Big lad, decent shot stopper, good at saving penalties. The big keeper's always better at saving penalties, just purely because there's less of the goal to aim at, and it's a psychological thing in my mind. I think Jay Ben will play it right back. And we'll not see an awful lot of Jay Ben in the first team in terms of the Football League matches because if TJ doesn't play there, Regan Poole can play there. We've proven Ted Bishop occasionally plays there. I don't like him there. So for Jay Ben, I think it's very much about development. It's telling that he didn't go out on loan. So he's clearly believed to be significant enough to this squad to have a senior role to play. And when you think about how many defenders that we actually have on our books, 1 minute. When you think about how many defenders we actually have on our books, I think that it's credit to Jay that he isn't out in a National League team right now. It's a pity we didn't do that with Charlie, but that was the club's Charlie Kendall, but that was the club's decision. So Jay Bennett right back. I think Jamie Robson plays left back. If Sean Rowan has taken a knock, which he certainly seemed to, it was a clash of knees, and I think he struggled a little bit. I can see him almost certainly sitting this one out. He has been close to the form I think he showed when he first came into the side back in 2021 season now, wasn't it? I think he's looked really good, really solid, but I don't think that he'll play. I think, and when you bring Jamie Robson in, you're bringing in a player who is every bit as good. He's a quality League One footballer, so relatively confident on fullbacks. At centre half, I think one of O'Connor or Poole will play. And then possibly Adam Jackson will get a run out as well. And again, any combination of those is League One quality defence, isn't it? And if you're bringing in somebody like Kieran Agard, for instance, at Doncaster, who not respect for, but probably has got his best years behind him, it's going to be a tough night, you would imagine, for Doncaster's attack. There is an outside chance, you never know, an outside chance that we might see Joe Walsh. Whether we don't really know what the situation is with Joe, so whether he gets 45 minutes, maybe he's on the bench and gets 20, 25 minutes at the end, I don't know. If he has recovered from whatever the knock is that he's got, then you would expect him to play some sort of part just to get some minutes into him. I think the holding midfield role, almost certain hands down, will be Jacob Davenport. I'll be absolutely devastated. That's overstating it. I won't be that happy if Davenport doesn't play. He's come in. I think he's a relatively big name signing, and I'll touch on Owen Dawson's question in a minute. I think that Jacob Davenport's a big signing for this club. I think that he is young enough to develop. I think that he has the upbringing and he's talented enough to significantly impact the first team picture. And I think that he can really challenge Lasse Sorensen in the 6 role or the 4 role, whatever you want to call it, CDM. So I think that he plays. I think he's got to. I think it's a no-brainer. Be really, really surprised if Max Sanders doesn't start ahead of him. Max obviously back on the bench on Saturday. We're going to need to get minutes into him. I could see it being a 60 minutes for Max and then swapping for somebody like Matty Virtue. Again, we don't know where Ted Bishop is in terms of his fitness. I don't think if he's closing in on fitness, he will be particularly risked tonight. So I think that there's a likelihood, again, that alongside Max, you'll see one of the other two established midfielders play, either Matty Virtue or Tashan Oakley Booth. And actually, I thought Tashan had a really good game on Saturday, and I think he's getting better and better. And I know Mark Kennedy before the season was absolutely thrilled to get Tashan. I spoke to him on the day we signed Tashan, and he couldn't speak highly enough of him. He said he was a player that he had noted down back when he was at Wolves as a youth coach. He played up against Tashan, and he was one of the players that he's got a little book of players to keep an eye on. He said he's such a good footballer. We hadn't seen that in the first few weeks of the season, but bear in mind he barely kicked a ball last season. First time in League One. I think it's taken him time to get up to speed. Tashan's a player I expect, if he does well for us, is one that we might be in for at the end of the season. I think his contract is up. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Sanders and Tashan play. It wouldn't surprise me to see Sanders and Matty Virtue play. Matty Virtue, I think, again, is another player who's going to be big for us this season. Really big. I think he had a really good game against Bristol Rovers. I thought he had a good 60, 65 minutes against Derby. He's getting back into the pace of playing senior football. Minutes tonight won't hurt him, given a 10-day break. Then you've got up top, almost certainly, I think we'll see Charles Vernon on one flank. And I feel desperately for Charles. I really do, because he was the main man in pre-season. He was the starting winger. He was on the flank. It was him. You imagined him and Scully before Scully left. And then right on the eve of the season, after having had a full pre-season, he's injured. Now, had he not been injured, he could have started that first game against Exeter. We saw how Hacks played. He put a cross in, good cross. Everybody was saying Hacks is great, and then we loaned him out to League Two. If it had been Charles on that wing doing the same things, and if Charles, and football's all ifs and buts, but if Charles had put that wing cross in, he wouldn't have been farmed out on loan, would he? It would have been new signings doing well, confidence. And I think that he's a player who, unfortunately, it's almost like he's got all the way to the start line of the race. And he's a red hot favourite, and then all of a sudden he's gone, I've got a tweak, and then all these people have come past him, your Jack Diamonds, your Jordan Garricks, and Charles is a little bit like the forgotten man, not quite as forgotten as Danny Mandrio, but he is a little bit of a forgotten man. This is the competition where he can come in and impress, like Zach Elbazedi did, like Theo Archibald did a couple of years ago, because Mark Kennedy's a player that if you impress, you will keep your place, or you will continue to get chances. Look at Sean Rowan, impressed, kept his place, first team player now. And I think that you can see that, I think, with Mark. And again with Tom. Tom came back on Saturday. Ben House kept his place. There could have been a temptation to put Tom straight back in. He had missed, one game? So match fitness is there. But Ben House kept his place and did very well. So I think with Mark Kennedy is a little bit more reward after risk. And I think that we can see that with Charles Vernon. Will go into the side tonight. And I think that if he does well, we can see that with him being further involved, especially with Jordan Garrick having a relatively weak game on Saturday. Wasn't at his best. He wasn't at his best. He came off at half time, I seem to remember. Obviously, Charles went on. Wouldn't surprise me to see Jordan on the other flank tonight, if I'm brutally honest. I don't think we'll see Danny Mandrio. I don't know where his fitness is. It'd be lovely just to see him on the bench, wouldn't it? Just to see him get 10 minutes, just to understand this player that kind of, when he arrived, I thought this is a huge signing, and then he's just disappeared off the face of the earth. Like Charles, been very unlucky, but you need to get past luck. Luck happens in both ways. Do you know what I mean? We're unlucky with certain players. We were lucky to get 6 on Saturday, in terms of how Bristol set up and one or two of the bounces and things like that. So luck works both ways. But in terms of injuries, we need a little bit of luck with players. We need, like they had. Harry Anderson was meant to have broken his foot, was meant to be out for 6 weeks, and then he's playing on the Saturday. All of a sudden, he's improved. So we need a little bit of luck. I'd like to see Danny Mandrio in the side. I'd love to see him get a start. He won't. I don't think he would. I think when he does come back in, he'll be eased in gently in the as a substitute. But these are the games to do it. So if he's nearing fitness, you never know. And then I think through the centre, I don't think we'll play Ben House. I think if Tom is near fitness, I think we'll put Tom in there. And I'm not saying go for it, because I just said to Ben Hughes on Twitter, I don't think we're going to play a strong side and go for the win, because even if we don't win this, that by beating Newcastle under 21s, you're probably still going to qualify anyway. I think if we were to beat Newcastle under 21s and lose to Doncaster, that would give us 6 points. Doncaster and Barnsley would then would be able to catch us. So it would depend then on other results. There's an outside chance that we still couldn't make it, but it is an outside chance. Yeah, so that's the lineup that I think we'll have. I'll just cover a couple. Just make sure that delivery van's not coming to me. Guys, all go this morning, isn't it? A couple of your questions, a couple of your good mornings, and then I shall get back to doing a real job. Jimmy Atkin, morning, mate. Jim said to me, you apologised the other day for not making all of the dog walks. You don't need to, but nice to see you, mate. Links, which is Jake, Todge's hairdresser. Morning, Gaz. Great win. Still said some of our fans booed Harry. If some of our fans booed Harry Anderson on Saturday, then genuinely you're a disgrace. And I thought when he went off, I thought I could hear a rousing rendition of "Oh, Harry." Great player, great servant, great lad. I wouldn't go as far as to cheer one of his goals as people did when Terry Hawkridge scored against Notts County, which will always bug me. But I will go as far as to say that I would cheer Harry Anderson off the field, even if he was wearing the shirt of another team. Hang on 1 second. Charlie, nobody's there. Kate, morning, Kate. Saturday proved how tight the division is. Just, yep, exactly what I've said and why the table still can't be taken seriously. We're 8th after a win, but we're 19th after we lost. Table is nowhere near settling down. And I think that just demonstrates after 9 or 10 games how close it's going to be. And I remember a League One season. I think it was just before, I think it was the year we came up. So I think it was 18-19. And I remember that with 10 games to go, the team in the bottom 4 could still finish 10th. And it was so, and they might not even be there, but it was so tight. Like one win was taking you up 6 places and the defeat was bringing you down. And Oxford were in the bottom 4, and I think they ended up finishing 10th. It was just a crazy, crazy division. Good morning, Owen Dawson. I'll come back to you in a second, I think. Luke says Virtue makes such a difference in that midfield. I think so. And I think Jacob Davenport could as well. You know, that's for me, Davenport, Virtue, and then Sanders or Sorensen or Bishop. Ideally, in my mind, Bishop, but Tashan to come in as well. We've got such an abundance of good midfield players. You almost feel like we should play something like 2-6-2 or something like that, just to get them all in there. I don't know what that means from the Fifi Islands in Thailand, but Paul is out there, so enjoy yourself, Paul. Chris Keneally, morning, mate. What a run from Tashan. Definitely gaining confidence and getting better and better. I can see why Kennedy wanted him so much. Yes, indeed. And heard any news on Monsma's return will be like a new quality signing. I heard he's still a couple of months away yet, I think. There's no rush to get Lewis Monsma back because I still think we've got decent defenders. And I don't think all of the errors that we've been looking at and we've been criticising are entirely on the defence. I think that the midfield is something to do with that. And I think that can be proven by looking back at last season and the season before, that when Liam Bridcut played, we conceded fewer goals. Well, he didn't play centre-half, did he? If you're offering the right protection in the front there and you're kind of closing down, you're pressing at the right time, the centre halves have an easier job to do. I think we've got centre halves. If balls are coming in long, they should be able to nod them away all day long. So when we play the Wickhams and teams like that, we'll be able to compete, you would hope. The problem that we have is when teams play a little bit on the floor, when they try and move through the thirds and come, kind of attack us with a phase of play and trying to switch cross and across, the holding midfielder isn't able to kind of hold that play up a little bit. I think that it affects the centre halves. However, when Monsma comes back, it will be massive. Richard Cross, do you think 8th is the highest we can do this season? I think if we finished 8th this season, I would happily run naked around my garden for an hour and a half. I think that I don't think it's the highest we can be at any individual point in the season. I think when you look at the games we've got coming up, they might actually suit us. Bolton away, they're a decent side. They'll try and play some football. Might suit us. Could be another 6-3 or 7-4 or whatever. But you never know, do you? That's the thing. The fact is that had results gone our way in games that I think they could have gone our way in, we'd probably be 3rd or 4th now. Do I think that we could finish there? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've probably got a budget to finish 15th, 14th, maybe a little bit higher. I think if things click for us and the players rise to the standards that they probably expect of themselves, and the coaching rises to the standard that they expect of themselves, maybe we could push 12th. But you're only ever 2 or 3 bad results away from being in the bottom 4. So it's impossible to predict. 8th almost certainly would be the highest finishing position, but it's still at the back of my mind. I still think 22nd, 23rd could be entirely possible as well. That's how close the division is, and that's how on a knife's edge this Lincoln City side is at the moment. We've seen the best, we've seen the worst. Away at Peterborough, away at Cambridge, awful. Away at Oxford, at home to Derby, excellent. Slightly off topic, from Owen, you mentioned him, so I'm going to ask Davenport. Why only a deal till January? I suppose you won't know for definite. I don't know for definite. My understanding is that we were looking at either signing midfielder or a centre forward from the free agent list. My understanding is that we did speak to and did investigate a certain number of centre forwards, all of whom wanted 2 or 3 year deals on good money, because it's a buyer's market. If you haven't got a centre forward in the transfer window, what are you doing? Free agent market. All of a sudden, the free agents nobody wanted on the Thursday morning are the only ones they can get on the Friday. Do you know what I mean? It's like going into the supermarket and all your favourite brands are there, and then going in an hour later and it's only the crap brands, and everybody's queuing for the crap brands because they've missed the favourite ones. That's not to say the players on the free agents list are crap, but there's a reason that they were on the free agents list, and some of them will have sat tight, not trying to get a deal, knowing that their value goes up. So it's a market that you have to be very, very careful in. Now, I often use the example of Joe Dodu. Yeah, I think I've pronounced that right. Who went to Doncaster, I think, last season. So they missed out on a striker on deadline day, as we did with Morgan Whittaker. My understanding is that Joe Dodu is one of the players who we investigated, think, shall we bring him in? And Doncaster put in a huge amount of money to bring Joe Dodu, or a significant amount of money, let's say, to take him to their football club instead. And they went down and he barely scored any, because they then didn't have that budget free in January. And that's where the Jacob Davenport deal until January comes in, because it gives us an opportunity to assess where we are in January, who we might move in, who we might move out, and gives us the most amount of wiggle room when the transfer window opens. It's not to say that we won't look to offer Jacob Davenport something more significant, but rather than tying ourselves, for even with Davenport, to a player who has had an injury record, rather than tying ourselves to him for even a full year and tying that money up in January, I think that we're just looking to give ourselves as much a space with recruitment as we can. And I think it's a wise decision if you can sell it right to the player, as long as the player doesn't feel undervalued. And let's face it, he's signed a deal here, so he can't feel undervalued. He's got an opportunity to prove himself. If he does really well in January, he could go, I'm going to find another club. That's his prerogative as well, but it works best for both parties, I think, at the minute. Richard Cross, if we only lose in Cambridgeshire this season, then we'll be fine. Indeed. Leslie believes that Jordan deserves to play. Leslie had some fish and chips in Mablethorpe the other night. God, I wish I'd driven to Lincoln, picked them up and taken back to the beach from you. They were awful. Let's have a look further down. Morning, Bernie Coy. Matt Strickson, I always like saying nice things about myself. Love listening to you while I'm working. Always a good listen. Thank you, my friend. Leslie says Tashan was looking far more settled and looking forward to seeing more of him. Yeah, me too. If he continues to improve the way he's doing, he'll be a little bit like Luis Fiorini, who struggled early doors, I think, last season and then really exploded. Julian soon says Lewis late October, beginning November. So yeah, we're looking 2 months-ish. James Hoy Anderson should still be here. Somebody should tell him he's been missing for a while then. Kevin McCarthy, next 6 games will tell us more about direction of travel. Tough run. They will. But you'll find yourself saying that all season, Kevin. I did. You know, you say, first 10 games we'll have an idea of where we are. Well, we've got 10 games through. We can see where we are. And now we're saying, well, the next 6 games will give us an idea of where we are. Ultimately, it's 46 games, I suppose. And I subscribe to it. We have got we've got some tough games coming up. We have. But I think that started, to be honest, at Derby, with Derby at home and Bristol Rovers away. It looked tough on paper, those two. Josh, good morning, mate. Good morning. Paul says it's a Thai greeting, a bit like hello. I'm pleased you're having a good time, my friend. Dale Warner, Saturday was our youngest starting 11 so far this season, and for the last 3 games, we've given more than 30% of our game minutes to loan players. Is this the perfect blend of experience and youth? I think there's we need a little bit more experience, in my opinion, just a little bit. But there's no doubting that we played in possession with a real verve and a real kind of attacking purpose on Saturday. You don't score 6 goals without that. Possession was something like 60-40, 65-35 in their favour, and same with Derby. So actually, for me, this feels like a team that's a little bit of a blend, and it's still settling down. So please don't rip me apart on this. Feels like a blend between Danny Cowley's teams and Mike Clapperton's teams. Because Danny Cowley's teams were, let's face it, better out of possession. And remember that game against Bury, the 3-3 draw, where the commentator on Sky Sports said we're looking at the best team in possession in League Two against the best team out of possession in League Two, Bury and Lincoln. And we were, and that's not to say we were a bad team in possession, but we were, what we did out of possession that season earned us the title. In possession, we were one of 7, 8, 9 teams that could finish in that top spot. Out of possession pushed us where we needed to be. With Michael Appleton, it was the other way around. It was all about the possession. And the year that we went to the playoff final, it was all about what we did with the ball. Once we had the ball, we had the ability to pick you apart. We played wonderful football. We made the right runs. We hit with pace. We were at times relentless until teams figured us out, of course. So they were two extremes, and they were both right for the football club. I think Mark Kennedy's trying to find the middle ground. And I'm trying not to compare him to either of those two managers because it's not fair. He's a head coach. Danny was manager. Michael was one or the other. I can't really remember. But you know, the style of play, I think, is trying to strike that balance. It's trying to strike the balance so that the fans who want to be entertained and want to see goalman action and want to see passing will applaud. But the fans who want to see thunderous tackles like Bozzy putting Marcus Maddison into the stand, the fans that they want to see the commitment, the goal line clearances, the blood and guts, they're happy as well. It's not easy to find. Find that blend, perfect it, get it right, and we'll have a really successful team. And tonight's result won't go. I started talking about tonight. I'm going off on a tangent, really. Tonight's result won't have anything to do with where we're going or anything. Tonight's result is a one-off game, an opportunity to look at certain players who we haven't seen in the flesh. Like Jay Ben, I don't think has played at Sincil-Bank. Jacob Davenport hasn't played at Sincil-Bank. There'll be a few players who, we're hoping to see for the first time, see how they fit. It won't have any bearing whatsoever. But going forward, this 10-day break sets us up for, as I can't remember who said it now, as Kev said, Kev McCarthy, for a really tough 6-game run. If the improvement we saw against Derby and Bristol Rovers in attacking areas was courtesy of that long break that we had, then this next break could just be the catalyst for us just to kick on, just to show pessimists like me. I was a pessimist a couple of weeks ago. Show pessimists like me where this club is actually going. I don't expect us to finish top 6. Don't expect us to be knocking on the door of the top 6. Don't expect us to finish top 10. But if we could just cling on to the upper half of the lower half of the table, if you know what I mean, if we could just hang around 12th, 15th, always more than 4 or 5 points clear of the drop, so that if you have that little bad run, you're not dragged in, but probably always just trying to hook on and climb up and possibly struggling. I think that would be the perfect place for us to build a successful football team and to attract players. And we talk about loan players, by the way, just quickly, we talk about loan players coming in and then us losing them and what damage that does to the football club. I put an interview that Jack Diamond did with Sunderland Echo on my site this morning, where Jack Diamond says, what Lincoln City do with loan players attracted me to the club. So actually it proves that it is sustainable. But if Brennan Johnson can come in, he can do what he wants, he can go off to the World Cup. It isn't a fact of like, oh God, now we've got to replace him. It's right, we've built on our reputation. And now Jack Diamond sees Brennan Johnson in the Premier League and goes, he did that at Lincoln City. So he comes to Lincoln City. Same with potentially Jordan Garrick, potentially anybody will look and say, well, they do that. So it is sustainable. And the loan market is something we need to tap into. This year, we've done it differently. This year, we haven't gone for the 18, 19-year-olds, the Brook Norton Coffees, the Lewis Fiorinas, the players who at times have struggled to settle down, and Lunderloo struggled to settle. We haven't gone for that type of player. We've gone for the player 23, 24. We've gone for the player who's played senior football, either at this level or elsewhere. We've gone for the player I think that we can look to sign, or who can then go on and improve. Jack Diamond's only going to go one place after this. 2 places. He's either going to leave Sunderland, at which point we'll be in with a chance of signing him, or he's going to go back to Sunderland and he's going to go into their first team because they're in the Championship. If he does that, he's just another example of what Lincoln City do to a player's career, in my opinion. So lots of positives. Got to be positive. Lose tonight, it'll be completely different. I'll be on a dog walk tomorrow screaming relegation, no doubt, because I seem to have turned into exactly the type of reactionary fan that I don't like. But there we go. So look, thank you very much. 34 minutes, 24 of which have been spent sitting in my garden with my dog wondering why I won't let him in the house. I hope you have a good Tuesday. I'm hoping to come to the game tonight, so if I do see some of you there, wonderful. Failing that, up the imps.